Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another test disc and some Hong Kong content for you guys with the Arrow Videos mega 14 movie box set that is Shawscope Volume 4 coming out in December of 2025. Currently making my way through this entire collection of very divisive films. This has definitely been leading the way from the initial first three box sets, which were a lot more traditional kung fu swordplay, with a couple of, risky ones in there, kind of testing the waters to see if the audience would want to see a box set like this. And we got a very strange and bonkers bit of exploitation, bit of sci-fi, a lot of horror, practical, gory kind of effects. Definitely a very sleazy film, I'd say, from the 70s, early 80s. And, this is going to work for you guys if you like these types of movies, or it's going to completely go the other way. And for this video, I'm currently on disc 2 now with the Maniac and Battle Wizard, which I'll be doing a double bill review for this video. And for my usual setup, I will be doing the feature films themselves and the special features. However, for this video, surprisingly, there isn't much special features to talk about and to dive into. So for the first time on my test disc kind of reviewing, I was talking about the special features first, which is only audio commentaries for both films. Both of these didn't get any major special features. I don't know if it's on the bonus disc. I'll have to check that out later on. But surprisingly, no one did any extensive interviews or deep dives into video analysis. It's very bare bones for these two films. As mentioned, the special features are just audio commentaries. The first one done by Ian James, who did the Maniac, and the second one was done by Jonathan Clemens, who is also the Brief History of Martial Arts author, which talks about Battle Wizard, which are both very positive audio commentaries. I've listened to about half of them, and they both give their own retrospective in terms of their own thoughts and impressions on the films and a bit of insight into the actual production and making of it. So insightful audio commentaries if you're interested in these two specific individuals, or if you want to know more about the film, which unfortunately the disc itself doesn't offer much more. I imagine the booklet edition, when it comes with the box set, will offer a bit more insight in terms of kind of the written essays, but in terms of the special features, unless it's on the bonus disc, this is all you're going to get, unfortunately. So without further ado, let's dive into both of these films and my thoughts and impressions on both the Maniac and Battle Wizard. The first film on this disc is the Maniac, released in 1976, directed by Hu Ma, who did the Flying Guillotine and the Dragon Missile. I have reviewed the Flying Guillotine already, and I think a few of his movies on the channel previously to this edition, so I'm a bit more familiar with this director, and he's done quite a variety of different types of films, and I think he's got a few more movies also on this edition as well. So definitely a very verse director that does taking a few risks and going for the more skew, kind of more weirder kind of Shaw Brothers films in his kind of filmography, especially if you look at his IMDb listing. It's quite an extensive amount of different types of films, but definitely was in the heart of those kind of 70s sleaze and kind of weaponry kind of work on monster movies, and doing a variety of different types of films, which is quite interesting to see more of his filmography thanks to this edition. The Maniac had a previous 88 film edition, which I never picked up. It was long out of print, and I wasn't particularly interested in it, if I'm being honest. I didn't know what to really expect of it, but I heard mixed opinions. And going into this film, being completely honest and blunt here, the Maniac pretty much sucks. It's not a great film. I think it's pretty boring. It's the biggest sin of this film. It is boring. And, if I sold the film as, hey, do you want a film where you're getting essentially a Jekyll and Hyde, Incredible Hulk type deal? You've got someone who has been given a kind of a talisman kind of tattoo, a kind of a ritual that he is basically used for evil intentions, for bad intentions instead of good, and he's basically transformed into this essentially monster kind of superhero kind of character, goes around the city and kills bad people or people that cheat the system, almost a vigilante style monster movie mashup that has elements of the Blob. I would say definitely rips off the Jaws theme for some reason, in terms of its kind of when it's kind of traveling and going dun, 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 and him going around and basically a guy in a rubber suit going back and forth and killing people left, right, and center. How does a movie sound like that to you guys? Are you interested? Well, guess what? You're not going to get it. You're going to get about 10% of that idea, and the rest of it is going to be a really boring courtroom drama, unlikable characters just going back and forth in this very contemporary, modern 70s kind of setting, which for some reason for me, you know, there are some exceptions to this. Anytime that Shaw Brothers do a definitely like a 70s, 1976 specifically in this case, more of a modern setting for their Shaw Brothers films, it's just something that kind of takes away the magic of it. I don't know what it is. I think it's just kind of not as interesting. I kind of miss those sets. I kind of miss the period kind of, you know, placement. I can lose myself in a bit of a fantasy, and, you know, in terms of the saw play and comfy work, when it's kind of like a more of a modern kind of, you know, modern apartments, the locations, the clothing, the attitude, it just kind of feels a bit icky and a bit dull and boring, a bit safe, and feels a little cheaper than it usually is, even though it does actually have some pretty good locations, and there definitely is some set work in this film, I can see for sure. But there's just something about it that, you know, for this film and a few others that I've seen previously, that just kind of takes away some of the kind of the more fun aspect of the film. I understand what it's trying to do. It's trying to kind of get you to understand, you know, you got Danny Lee again from the previous film. I jokingly saying this is basically the Danny Lee box set, being the fact he's also the main character in Battle Wizard as well. It's kind of funny that 3 films I've seen of his now are back-to-back Danny Lee. And this one, I don't think he's particularly that good. I think the performances are pretty shit, if I'm being honest. I think the characters are just unlikable. Even our main character, you know, his motivation to turn into the oily maniac is a bit weak, if I'm being honest. He just kind of is a practicing lawyer or someone who works in that kind of, you know, firm, and he's seeing the kind of the corruption and the kind of the bribery and the blackmail and double crossing going on, and he just turns into a oily maniac, or he has to kind of find oil to spray on him to turn into the monster, and then he goes around killing, kind of like aimless really. And it's just, there's a sort of a love interest but not a love interest, and overly long, even for an hour and a half movie, it kind of drags itself, and even when it gets to the kind of the more fun, more campier side of it, it's too little, too late. It's kind of lost its always charm. Instead of being a fun, campy, silly monster superhero film in the verge of kind of Toxic Avenger, which funny enough, this was kind of pre-10 years Toxic Avenger, where the first one was 1984, I believe, in terms of the original Toxic Avenger. This feels like a prototype version of that idea, but just done way too seriously, focuses on the wrong characters, focuses on the wrong type of material, and has kind of weird kind of messaging. Even the whole idea of being raped and being abused and victimized, it's almost like sinful. It's almost like, you know, a shameful kind of, you know, betrayal, and it's, you know, end in suicide. It's kind of really strange and deliberately pervy kind of men who lick their lips and, you know, are tag teaming to try and get the woman they want to rape. And it's just, the bottom line, the oily maniac I think completely sucks. I think it is way too serious for its own good. Instead of being a kind of a fun, campy kind of monster movie in the wake of kind of Jekyll and Hyde, and just having a guy in a rubber suit spilling kind of oil everywhere, and yeah, granted, it does have its moments with some of the more kind of kills later on in the third act, which definitely delivers a little bit more. By that point, it's too little, too late. I don't care. Completely failed its premise. Keep in mind, this is just my thoughts and impressions on the film. You might really like it, but for me, there's a reason why I never picked up the 88 film version, and definitely is one that I would be skipping in further viewings. And last on the disc, we have Battle Wizard, released in 1977, directed by Pao-Ching Lee, which is one of the co-directors of my favourite films from the Volume 1 box set, the box set from Shantoon, which was the assistant director, I believe the action director, alongside Shan-Chi, which I absolutely love that movie. It's one of my favourites from that box set. And looking at the IMDb, a little bit more research into the director, definitely more known to be an action director. A lot of his other films that I have heard of from that Riku edition box set, but he seems to do the big scale films, the big action films, and which makes complete sense why he would direct and own and maintain this really bonkers, crazy film called The Battle Wizard, which has kung fu, which has sword play work, has a lot of practical and visual effects. It has kind of giant monsters with the Red Pantheon, snake monster, gorillas, people in costumes, has grand sets, really awesome kind of Shaw Brothers kind of set locations, and just has a really coherent, really fun revenge storyline, some great supporting characters, great villains over the top and silly. And I gotta say, this was definitely the film I needed. This was a breath of fresh air after coming off the first 2 movies, which I didn't mind the first one. The Oily Maniac, as mentioned already, didn't like at all. This was much needed. This was the, thank God, this was a banger of a film. Really likable and engaging main leading characters, including Danny Lee returning again, free for free now in terms of this box set, being the fact he did have, of course, a lot of association with Shaw Brothers, and a lot of films with them, and of course, this is just another film on his belt. I definitely think this is his best performance out of the initial 3 films I've seen so far, and this is a perfect example of a film which has a great storyline, a really fun popcorn kind of storyline, coherent revenge storyline, which makes sense, which is engaging, which is fluid. It has surprises involved in it, and you're really invested in what's going on in this film, and you want to see where these characters go and dive more into this world. And being the fact it has all this bonkers kind of ideas involving it in terms of fighting a gorilla, fighting a red snake kind of monster creature, and you've got magic and abilities and people pointing lasers on their fingers, great characters, great sense of humor. It actually has characters you can get invested and involved in, emotional scenes as well, actually some conflicting kind of emotional kind of ties. It knows when to utilize all these different types of elements and places it together in a coherent, really fun popcorn movie from Shaw Brothers. And Danny Lee's character, which is very interesting, I think is a really good concept for a film, which I don't think I've seen anything quite like it. Maybe I've seen variations of it, but a character which wants to be a pacifist, who doesn't want to learn martial arts, who hasn't learned martial arts. He believes that you can survive in this world without learning martial arts, because martial arts and fighting leads to kind of violence, war, and all sorts of things. He wants to go on this little adventure to basically find people that can survive in this world without having that skill set. And as to be expected, it all goes completely wrong and goes into this kind of deer in headlights kind of situation, and in a world he does not understand and has no idea about. And there are magical clans and assassins and all sorts of different types of things going on, basically throwing himself into a Zulu Warriors type universe, and he is way over his head. And for most of the film, he's actually quite defenseless. He can't actually fight. He comes across various different kind of characters, and he means well. He's a good-hearted person that means well, that's trying to understand a bit more of the world. You know, obviously he's in high status, he's a prince, and he just wants to understand a bit more about himself as well. And he comes across his various different type of characters and situations, and he basically has to go on this kind of adventure journey to find this kind of legendary assassin woman. This person has a veil over her face who covers herself up, and basically you don't speak her name, you don't go near her, because she will kill you stone dead. And essentially, this character, played by Tammy Lee, which also is very good in the film, I thought was a really great actress and really holds her own, has a really good persona as this kind of legendary kind of assassin character, ends up being the sister of Danny Lee's character, which ends up being the daughter that was a part of that initial affair at the start of the film. So you've got very much a family-orientated kind of revenge drama, kind of mystery kind of film, which is great. You've got all 3 of the adulterers and the husband and the kids involved, and it's great. It's a really cool little kind of story that goes along. Pleasantly surprised by Battle Wizard. I had a really fun time watching this from start to finish, and it's great to have a solid first kind of film on this edition. For me personally, it was definitely my tempo, my jam, and I'm really glad this is getting a good HD release, being the fact this doesn't have a previous release, I don't believe, on a other distribution, and they might have one from imprint maybe down the line, but this is a really good film to have on the edition. It's a shame there's no more extras talking about it and has more appreciation. So that's been my thoughts and impressions on the all-new Maniac and Battle Wizard. What are your thoughts and impressions, guys? Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. Signing out.